What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Real Estate Served on the Rocks, powered by Living in Colorado, The Mile High Perspective on YouTube, Fathom Realty, and Keller Williams Downtown. My name is Charlie Sardelli, and as always, I am here with
Jameson Amaros,
Oscar Ibarra.
And where are we, guys?
We are at the Rouge
La
Wine
Rouge.
and Bourbon Bistro.
Is it the Rouge?
Conveniently
The Rouge?
located off of I-25 and Arapahoe Road in Greenwood Village.
Just off I-25, 5 Mile East. No, that's a Shane company.
But hey, you know what? You have a couple good drinks here. You might go down to the Shane Company and propose to that girl you were.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know.
Ooh.
Oh,
is
yeah.
that a segue?
Speaking of,
Are we segueing into that right now?
What's up, everybody?
Is
I'm
that public?
engaged.
Is that public knowledge?
say,
Yeah.
Charlie's got some news.
Oh, yeah. So,
Congratulations, Charlie.
Thank you very much. Told you guys that I was going to Scotland, and the reason that I went to Scotland was because I wanted to surprise my girlfriend and do my engagement
Now
out there in the
fiancé.
place that my fiance, excuse me, I got to get used to it. I wanted to surprise her in one of the places that she's always wanted to go. So it was a beautiful trip. Tried a shit ton of whiskey out there. Guys, if you ever visit Scotland, do not, and I repeat, do not call it Scotch, okay?
It's whiskey. Huh?
It's whiskey. I got told immediately that it wasn't that.
You don't want to piss off anybody over there.
No, I didn't want to
fighters, I
disrespect
heard.
anybody, you know? But
Yeah,
on
William
that,
Wallace came out.
Yeah.
Like, no.
on that note, guys, on this podcast, we like to talk about topics that keep you informed and allow you to make, the right decision in the housing market and just overall decisions. And today we have the election edition of the episode. So on today's episode, guys, we're going to, as always, we're going to stay center line, but what we want to do is cover some of the policies that are on the docket this year for the election that relate to the housing market, buying homes, all that kind of stuff. So on this episode, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the $25,000 down payment assistance plan for new homeowners. Then we're going to talk about the acquiring of federal land for residences and building more property. And then lastly, we're going to talk about how immigration affects the housing market and how it can affect the housing market.
So we're going to tell you all who we're going to vote for
Yeah.
at the end. We're talking religion and
we're
politics.
We're going to toe the line.
I don't know, religion and politics, and for some reason that gives Charlie a erection. That kind of,
Either way,
6 feet,
guys,
Charlie. 6
Either
feet.
way, we just want to make sure that you are as informed as possible because there's a lot of information flying around out there. And, when this all started, when it really picked up last year, I talked about, and we had a full episode on, how lowering interest rates wasn't going to help anything because there was a candidate that was running at that time. We just want to give you the information and lay it out from the market, from the horse's mouth or whatever it is, and just hope that you understand it and you can make your decision. Because at the end of the day, whatever side you go on, as an American, we get the right to vote, and you should go out and vote in every single election that you can.
I'd like to do a little bit of a kind of told you so, kind of did. If you go back a few of our episodes, I was saying it's not working messing with the interest rate. We said it. Last interest rates were lower at some point this year. And last episode that Jameson was here, he talked about how the interest rate was lower. We were still up year over year in price, and we were not selling that month. So it was kind of skewed and all over the place. If that doesn't define that the interest rate was not the issue, I don't know what does. I mean, it was all there. It's kind of spelled out for you.
Yeah, and this is an important topic strictly because the survey that I saw, there's been a bunch of them, when they talk about what election and policy topics are important to people, 70% of voters said that they were highly concerned about housing affordability. Mm-hmm. So we already know that whatever the rhetoric is around housing is going to play a very integral part in who gets elected, how people make their choices. So, and I said it in a video earlier, but we're at the Oprah Winfrey stage, right? Where both candidates are trying to appease the largest amount of voters by just promising outlandish things, and people get really, really excited. So what we want to do is take some of the outlandish things, rein it back in, break it down, and give you guys kind of what our professional opinions would be on if these things do get implemented, what is the actual and real impact for consumers going into 2025 in the next 4 years.
And we can only fact check him so much, but I think it was a big aha moment for me, because I think the rhetoric behind immigration is that, right? It's immigration, and it gets ugly, and it's a very ugly subject for whatever party you're on. But when it comes to housing, I never looked at it that way.
Yeah.
We do need to house these folks, whether you like it or not. And I don't care what side you're on. There's a body that needs a home, and that's kind of messing with the housing market. And I never really looked at it that way, because it was its own separate rhetoric that was just kind of messy and ugly. And I was like, that has nothing to do with us. It kind of does.
And yeah, no, and honestly, that's the thing too, Oscar, is these topics are hard to talk about, especially these days. And the one thing that makes them a lot easier to talk about is the other part of our podcast, and that is bourbon. And on today's episode, as you guys know, we are extremely blessed to be sponsored here by the Rouge. And Chris Collins, the head chef here, he picks the bourbons that we get to try, and they have access to over. I mean, I'm looking at a wall of over 150 bourbon bottles that we're trying. But what we wanted to highlight today is another one of the Rouge selects. So on today's episode, we are drinking Maker's Mark Private Selection. And the cool part about this Maker's Mark bottle is that although it is the Rouge bottle, the availability to do a private selection through Maker's Mark is for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? So what it is with the Maker's Mark Private Selection is Maker's Mark takes their Maker's Mark 46, their standard Maker's Mark bottle, and what they do is they offer 10 different staves. So a stave, guys, if you've watched the podcast for a while, even if you're new, a stave is just basically a cut of the barrel, the wood from the barrel that bourbon gets aged in. And what Maker's Mark has done is they have 10 different staves that you can choose from. And when you choose these staves, what that does is you get to pick 5 of the 10, and they put them in the barrel, your barrel that you've selected, and then they let it sit for another, I think it said 8 weeks, 9 weeks. So what that does is then that creates a more unique flavor profile. So I'm going to go ahead and pour this out, but I mean, I'm excited for this one, guys. We're sitting at another 110 proof.
I got to go up to Bailey, so one, maybe two. All right, one. It's funny that we have been doing so many bourbons, and we're I don't want to say, can we call ourselves connoisseurs? I don't know, drunks.
I mean, I
alcoholics,
don't know.
whatever you want to call us.
We're in an election cycle. We can call ourselves whatever
You call
we
it how
want.
I want. I
I was gonna
identify
say
as a bourbon drinker.
The head taster told us that we're certified,
right on.
remember?
Yeah, we're right on the money. But what I was going with that is that I don't want to say surprisingly, I'm pleasantly, surprised with Chris's picks.
Oh yeah.
He's good.
Yeah. Well, and that's honestly Oscar.
Not just because we're here. He's
Did
good.
I pay you for that segue?
No.
That was amazing.
No.
So remember what I said about the
You're
private
getting
select, guys. Right? Remember what I said about the private select is you actually get to go in and hand choose the different staves. So what I want to do is kind of just give you the rundown on the different staves that Chris selected for the Rouge and Pindustries barrels here. So the first one is Baked American Pure stave, and that is a 1 on the char profile.
Got it.
Then the second one is a Seared French Cuvée, and that is a 4 on the char scale. The third one is the normal Maker's Mark 46 barrel. So we're just kind of reinstituting. And if you guys have Maker's Mark is one that you're going to see on pretty much every single bar shelf that you go into. It's a staple. It's very affordable, and it's up there with the flavor. I think it's going to be better than like a Jack most of the time.
100% of the time, every time.
This is one of my best friend's favorite bottles is Maker's Mark. Like
Yeah.
he has their cigars and all that kind of stuff.
So we actually did that for my best friend.
Yeah?
Because he was 46 when he passed away.
That's awesome.
So we got the Maker's Mark 46 for him.
That's
and
awesome.
drank it.
And on there, the fourth stave that they use is a roasted French mediant, and then that is a 3 char, and the last one is a toasted French spice, and that is a 1 char. So it's really well balanced when it comes to the char. It's dark, just out of the bottle.
The cuvee, if I'm not mistaken, is a wine barrel.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
going to
it's a
say a
French-
sous vide
it's
is
a-
a
it's
way
a
of
French-
cooking. So I was
yeah.
like, is
Yeah,
it sous
no,
vide or
cuvee
cuvee?
is there's a cuvee wine, but I'm almost positive that's a wine barrel. So that'll be interesting
Yeah.
to see what that what that does to the flavor,
And I mean,
flavor profile.
I don't know a lot of the history of Maker's Mark, but is it did they really come into the industry in 53?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Because it from 53 now, I mean, it's one of those bourbons that is such a staple. You would think they had a long history, like a lot of the stuff that we've had on the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's cool. It's a family affair. I mean, it's Bill Senior. He was the guy, engineering the flavor, and then his wife came in and made the bottles really nice and thought about dipping them in
wax.
and wax,
Yeah,
and that's awesome. That's all marketing.
So no, I was going to say exactly. That's a great point to bring up, Oscar. For all of our listeners that aren't watching the video portion, Maker's Mark is the bottle that you see with the dip wax top, where you have to pull the wax off the top of the bottle in order to open it. That's Maker's Mark. If you're not familiar with,
It reminds me of
bourbons.
like the movies in like the 1500s,
Yeah.
where any important letter that was getting delivered, they stamped it with the
Well, and it's cool in the front.
With
Did
the
you see
wax.
it? Did you see it on the
Yeah.
front of the bottle? It actually has a wax stamp.
Yeah.
And again, that probably played into,
Mm-hmm.
we're an older company
Yeah.
because
like I
they're
kind of
doing
want to
those-
send this bottle to somebody with a raven.
I want to put.
Jesus, I would have went with like a pigeon, but
I want to put like
Halloween.
A,
We'll go
No,
for it.
send it to the north wall.
Yeah.
Jesus.
I want to put a handwritten note and just throw it in the
Yeah.
water.
Speaking of which,
Sponsor.
Yeah,
sponsored by. I wish.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
you're,
Send it to Jon Snow.
I mean, this guy. Oof.
On that note, guys, I want to go ahead and just get my nose in it because I'm surprised by the color of this. It's really dark, especially compared to normal makers. So, what are you guys getting?
Rose.
Rose. Definitely more floral.
Yep.
Sweeter too.
I'm getting floral.
Rose. Yeah, I'm getting floral.
Mm-hmm.
Caramel. A little bit of spice.
The spice is really subtle.
Little
Really,
bit of
really
spice.
subtle. Yeah.
Slow down. You're leading my nose. Trying to find the different flavors. I'm like, oh yeah. Oh yeah.
We need Oscar's unique.
I can't even find it. I'm over here in the rose garden because of Jameson.
It kind of smells like the I'm getting like inside of a Jiffy Lube.
The inside strap of Oscar's hat. Is that what
It's reminding me of the dating parties.
Oh man, no, it's sweet. It's got the vanilla up front.
Is that Johnson & Johnson that I smell?
I will say for 110 proof, it's not. Maybe we're just getting to that point where I can stick my nose in
No,
high
it's
proof.
There's
but-
zero,
there's zero burn.
zero burn.
Yeah, I mean, I can like.
There's
I don't know if you guys
literally
can.
zero burn. Zero. Zero.
Well, gentlemen, let's go ahead and get those sips
What's
in.
the
Cheers.
proof?
110.
Cheers.
I'm interested because I feel like this is going to be one where the spice isn't really forward on the nose, but then you're going to get a lot of that on the sip. Let's see.
I kind of
Boom.
have the weird.
Boom! I was right.
I have the weird smell
Yeah.
when you're ready.
It's so crazy. It's like when you get the spice on the nose, you don't get it in the flavor, but when you don't get the spice on the nose, it's so heavy in the flavor.
I don't think the spice is that heavy at all.
Really?
Matter of fact, this might be the most dangerous bottle of bourbon that we've ever tasted.
Oh, you weren't here for Whistle Pig.
Whispig was really good, but it was also rye.
Dude, this is like candy.
It's not bad at all.
This is
You
like
know what?
candy.
It leads in, kind of like Travelers, but it gives a little bit more of a sour mash to me at the end.
It does,
Yeah.
but I mean, once you
It's smooth.
Yeah.
once you go
Proof-wise?
through it though,
Yeah.
like
That was my first drink. Let's see.
if you just leave it, like swallow it, and then just let the aftertaste linger a little bit.
You're not getting the spice punch on the tip of your tongue?
No, not really.
I'm getting so much concentration right on the tip of my tongue. Black pepper.
I'm getting spice. It's very wet. If
Yeah.
that makes any.
Yeah, no,
It's
absolutely.
not like super dry. It lingers. It's good. It's kind of heavier. Texture.
Maybe a
end.
little bit of black pepper, but the back end is so sweet.
Yeah, no, the back end.
and
is
maybe that's what
100%.
I'm tasting.
Yeah.
The black pepper.
Like
not
yes,
so
if
much-
I hold it,
'cause
then
it's
the
kinda
tip of my tongue,
sour.
I can get kind of that black pepper.
I wouldn't say sour. It's bitter. It
Yeah.
has a slight bitterness. A
The
good in a
mash.
good way.
Yeah,
in
it's
a
like-
good way.
Yeah, absolutely. Huh.
Yeah, but that caramel just sits.
And it's
I'm not-
not even like for 110 proof.
I feel zero
Wow.
burn on my esophagus. I'll tell you
Yeah,
that much.
no,
Like,
I-
there's
I could-
nothing
yeah,
going down.
I could turn this up.
It's not making me cough at all.
No, I
as you
could-
can tell, I'm breathing
I
normally.
could
Yeah.
chug this.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Jesus.
100%.
Can we throw up the 1-800 number for Jameson? This is chugging bourbon.
I don't know.
at this
I don't know. We might have to do that for
You guys,
golf
it's not
before
my
bourbon.
fault. It's an erection here.
It's the erections.
It's
making
the
me do it.
erections.
It's very
Okay.
candied.
Making me do it.
If you're
very
kind of conversing, drinking, It kind of gets candied.
Do you guys
Yeah.
In the
ever
back.
eat Rolos?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I get. It's
Okay.
like a
I
Rolo.
could see that.
Yeah, that back end taste of that caramel chocolate.
Yep.
And that weird smell profile you want.
They're like a Toblerone.
Um,
I don't know. I just get that caramel chocolate is
Is there?
It's not overwhelming, but it definitely turns the heat down.
Yeah.
Which also makes sense how dark it is. I mean,
Desitin.
but again, like I said, some of the staves are wine barrels.
Yes.
So I think you get that real deep,
That's
like
sweeter.
yes,
But you would think you would
plum.
get. Obviously, you're going to
grape.
get some of those tannins, right? I mean, it's.
But it's not. It's tart. It's yeah. I don't know how to put it. It's not like sour tart, but it's definitely a little more. What it's almost like it's almost like I feel it like squeezing the outside of my tongue, like pulling it in.
And to segue from your drinkability, I think it's kind of refreshing.
Yeah.
It's like wet. It's weird to explain. It doesn't.
It's
go on-
heavy.
Yeah, and you could drink. You know,
Yes.
you don't
It's like
sip.
it tastes dense.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
that's a
like
great way to put
drinking
it.
like
It tastes dense.
a glass of milk, kind of.
Yes,
you know,
it tastes
it's,
dense.
it's there.
Yes, it's got some weight to it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's a
Absolutely.
good. It has some weight to it.
Absolutely.
It's got some weight to it.
That's gonna be good. We gotta be
does
careful
not-
though, because
Does not taste.
not 110.
110.
No.
Not at all.
No.
No.
That not at all. Not at all. And guys, as always, you guys can find this bottle here at the Rouge. Like I said, this is what's crazy about it with the private selection is with the 10 different barrel choices, you can have over 1,000 different combinations to make the bottle. So, as with all the Rouge picks, all the Rouge barrel picks, like we did with the Whistle Pig, the Old Forester, this bottle, this stave selection, I guess, you can have here at the Rouge. And at the end of the episode, we'll go ahead and let you know what the bottle, or not the bottle, the pour cost is, because like we always say, it's great to be able to go into a place and taste a bourbon before you spend on the entire bottle. So guys, check them out. Definitely come in and sit down and sip through, talk with Chris, learn a little bit about bourbon. But
Or the other two gentlemen.
yeah, the bartenders here
are
have always been phenomenal.
Very, very, very knowledgeable.
Absolutely.
They really are.
I'll tell you what
Nice
was really
guys.
cool.
Nice
When I was
guys.
in, and we don't really drink Scotch or whiskey, but when I was in Scotland, I tried.
Take that easy. You're back in American soil.
Well, I tried about 15 different whiskeys out there, and before I left, I was like, yeah, I'm not really a Scotch person, or like now, I'm looking forward to it. I want to try more because they actually explained it to me. They took the time, and it was really like being here,
Yeah.
where they said, no, try this because of this, and this is how they distill it, all that kind of stuff.
It's
Do you remember any of the peat ratings?
No,
It's always great to go to the origination place of something, right? It's just you feel it more.
yeah, and what was
That's
crazy
why
is,
cocaine from Colombia is so good.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think one of the guys of the podcast was like, can't even do cocaine in America anymore. I mean, you gotta go, Colombia where it's pure. Jeez,
I
that
mean,
segued
if the
into
money's
something
there,
bad.
Go straight to the
there.
cocoa plant itself.
Easy.
Well, you guys,
we don't do drugs, nor
No,
do we.
nor do we condone doing
No,
things.
no. Let's just get that off the table. But I wanted to ask. Jesus, bunch
Sorry.
of heathens.
Guys,
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Are you guys ready for this?
No,
conversation?
hold on. I had a quick question for
Okay,
you.
yeah.
What was your favorite?
Oh man, so I tried so many different ones, but Isle of the Sky itself actually has 4 different distilleries on the Isle, and there's one there that's called Isle of Skye, and it started with a T. I can't remember it, but they do 3 different whiskeys there. And the one that they had that was like their middle smoke. Remember, Jameson, when we were doing the tequila at the tasting there? It reminded me of that.
Like a mezcal?
Yeah, kind of like a mezcal.
I've always said mezcals are really close to scotches.
Yep, yeah, and it was honestly, it was just awesome to basically have like a rotation, and they were so kind about it too. They were like, "Oh, you tried this one? Okay, well, did you like the peat on that? Did you like the smoke? Try this one." And they literally just guided me through. And I'll send you guys a picture. But
Did they guide you back to your hotel room?
No, I was good. I was
Oh,
good. You know, it.
You held your own because
I
of the
did.
podcast.
That's right, baby. I told them too. You want to hear something funny though? They only had on their bar, they had an old fashioned, and the only 2 whiskeys and/or bourbon that they had was Woodford Reserve and Jack Daniels.
Wow.
The only 2 at the bar.
I would have left the country.
I would have been like, give me a shot of Jack. I'm out.
It was it was a really cool experience.
Woodford Reserves, it's a staple
It's there,
for old
yeah.
fashioned.
Except for that shitty one that
Yeah.
Lauren brought.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? Oh, no, was that Breckenridge?
No, that was Breckenridge.
She brought the
No,
rum
it was
That's right.
It was
Yeah.
Breckenridge
Rum
Rum
Cask.
Cask.
Yeah,
We had a rum cask Woodford Reserve too, or like a sherry cask or
Yes,
something.
we
Yeah.
did.
And we drank it. And we're like, what is?
Why do this?
Yeah.
Why do this? All right, you guys ready for this one? You guys ready to start this conversation?
Uh,
Are
I-
you guys ready to start this conversation?
You know what? The day is the day.
The
So,
day is the day. All right, so guys, like I said,
I mean, it's doomy and gloomy outside. Might as well be doomy. And
Hey,
gloomy.
I enjoy this weather. I do
Right?
some of the best work
you
in
are
this weather.
sick man.
Oh, I'm,
Jameson walked in today and he was like, "Yeah, I hate this. I don't. Why?
No.
It was 75 yesterday. Why the hell is it
for
30?
someone that enjoys Seattle so much, you should be used to this.
Who said I enjoyed
Didn't
Seattle?
y'all weren't you in Seattle like
Yeah,
for
and
like
you know what?
5 times a year last year?
No, I went to Seattle once, and the one
Are
time
you
we
sure?
went,
Because I'm
100%
pretty sure that was
positive.
you.
No, my dad lived there.
Okay,
but
I
we
don't
only-
know. For
we
some
only-
reason,
yeah,
I
we
pinged
only
you as
went-
a
we only
Seattle
went there
guy.
once, and the one time we went was over a 4-day weekend, and it was 86 and sunny the entire time. And my dad even made the comment. He goes, "This is the first time I've seen the sun in 6 months."
That's crazy.
Jeez.
And I was
couldn't
like,
do
"Yeah,
that.
fuck this state."
I couldn't." do
Yeah.
that. All right, guys. So, like I said, the way that we want to talk about this is we're going to talk about the policy itself. We are not going to talk about the candidate. We're going to talk about the policy and how it affects housing. So, the first one that we're going to start talking about is $25,000 in down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and low-income buyers for housing. So, obviously, guys, we talked about it before, right? When it comes down to the housing market, it all comes down to supply and demand, right? And upfront, don't get me wrong, I as somebody who hasn't bought a house yet, I would absolutely love an additional $25,000.
how's it work?
All right, so
Why don't we go through that first?
yeah, so basically how it works is you do have to apply just like you do for first-time home buyer loans, all that kind of stuff. So standard application through a lender, you get set up, you run your credit, all of that goes through. But there are a couple stipulations that are on top of that as far as how much you earn a year, and I believe, Jemison, I know you're looking it up right now, but it was $70,000 and below. Am I correct on that?
For what? I'm sorry.
For the $25,000 to be eligible for the
Yes.
$25,000, you have to make $70,000 or below a year. Which, as of right now, the median income for a single American is around 55, or 50 to 55. And again, that's median, guys. So don't forget, we're across the entire United States with this. So up front, it does look good. It does. As somebody who hasn't bought a house yet, you're going, wow, you're going to give me $25,000 towards my down payment.
Now,
That's
is it
going
a
to take
grant?
away.
It's not. You don't have to pay it back or any of that stuff.
Nope.
That is, and that's a very important distinction, right? So you have grants, and then you have down payment assistance. Grants are forgivable. Down payment assistance is not.
Typically, they sometimes have some kind of stipulation in them.
Yeah.
But you're in the house for 5 years and it goes away and it's your money. Now, this is I can't remember which party. I was working with a performer last night and I had very little.
We're good. We're not talking about parties. We're just vibing on the idea.
No. I what I'm saying is I was trying to do as much research
Yeah.
throughout the week, and then last night I was kind of cramming. But what I can't remember which party it was, but they're trying to loosen up guidelines for affordability for
Yes.
affordable housing, and I think that's one big one that has to be coupled with this,
Yes.
because so many times that I've had a client that it's just it's impossible because they have a car loan or because they have this and their income is right at where it should be, but they don't qualify because of the car loan, or their income is little just high enough and they don't have any debt. So it needs to be a square peg in a square hole kind of deal, and not everybody has that scenario. That's my biggest issues with these kind of programs is make the guidelines, I don't want to say loose so anybody could do them, but let the states regulate the income amounts, because it's damn near impossible for a single mom with a kid to qualify for a decent home for her kid. And that's my biggest gripe with these. If they could do that, I'm all for it.
So
on
here's
top
the-
of my fiscal viewpoint, I'm always like my first knee-jerk reaction is, where's the money coming from?
Yep.
Well, that's always going to be the
Yeah,
case, right?
yeah, we'll get
but
there.
here's the requirements. Okay, so this has not been passed. It's a Biden holdover that another party has said, hey, we're gonna bring it. But the plan originated. We can talk about that, right? The plan originated back in 2021 with the Biden administration. So the way it works, there's a few requirements. The first one is you have to be either a first-time home buyer or a first-generation home buyer.
And then that's a very
So-
subjective. I'd like to know more about that, because if you
Right.
sell a house, all of a sudden you're
Well, hold on.
again with that, right?
So here we go. So first-time homebuyer means you have not originated a loan on a primary residence in the last 3 years.
Okay.
So
That's
you
not
can
bad.
be a first-time homebuyer. Like I would qualify as a first-time homebuyer if I went and purchased another house, because I purchased my last house more than 3 years ago, right? But you have to rent 3 years, or you have to put it in somebody else's name, right? So
So if you moved out of your house,
I would have to
went and
rent
rent-
for 3 years, and then I would re-qualify.
you know what this benefits a lot is someone that's gone through short sale foreclosure.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Yep. So you must not have owned or co-signed on a mortgage loan in the past 3 years. Okay. First generation is if your parents, legal guardian, spouse, or domestic partner have not owned a home in the past 3 years. It is waived for all home buyers who have previously lived in foster care and fall within the income limits of the program,
What the hell does that have to do with it?
because they're trying to target economically
Displaced
individuals.
So somebody who didn't grow up with family probably doesn't have an inheritance, doesn't
Correct.
have those bank accounts, so
Yes.
it just gives them more access.
Yes.
Pretty sure my cousin has a friend in Florida that was in foster care. That's a millionaire.
I mean,
Sure. I mean-
struggle breeds success.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's all right.
Yeah.
I'll roll with the punches.
To
Keep it
your
coming.
point, Oscar, household income limits. So you have to make less than 120% of the area median income.
Yeah.
In higher real estate markets, think Miami, Seattle, parts of Denver,
Well,
Douglas
and
County.
no, I really
you can
do
go
love
up to
that.
180%
I love that because one of the biggest issues-
180% of the average.
of the
120,
median area of the area median income.
So the reason I like that a lot is because we talk about it all the time. Markets are individual, right? Not the Colorado market's different than Kansas, California, whatever it is. I like that that's in there because what that does is that again allows that to be adjusted
Correct.
per state, basically per resident.
Yes. Exactly.
And okay, so that's just for the down payment assistance stuff, right?
Well, hold on. So there's still more. So this is for the $25,000
Right,
grant
right,
money.
right.
Okay, that's forgivable. You don't have to pay it back. We'll get to that part too. Property types, you can use it for single family condo or manufactured home, which is nice because a lot of times manufactured homes tend to be the most economically responsible way to purchase a house, right? Because they're cheap
And the most
but
difficult.
most difficult.
A
But
lot of banks
this,
don't want to do it.
This would apply to that. You can purchase a multi-unit home with up to 4 units, provided you live in one of the units while renting out to
Basic FHA.
others, which is house hacking, right? It does not qualify for a second home or rental property. So
Good, as it should.
good, right? As it should. And then here's the other piece of this. This is the big caveat. It does require a 5-year residency. So if you don't want to pay back that $25,000, you have to live in the home
for 5 years.
for 5 years. If you sell it before then, the only way it's not repayable is if you're making less on the home sale than the original grant. Then you don't have to pay back; you just pay the difference.
Okay.
So I mean, it's
Yeah, standard.
piggybacking on what we've done in the past.
And then finally,
Aurora Hope,
it's
all that other stuff.
yeah. And then finally, you have to take housing counseling courses, which are about an hour and a half.
Again, basic down
Yep.
payment assistance stuff.
So the big difference between most of the down payment assistance things that we deal with, CHAFA, if you're in Colorado, right, where they'll give up to 3.5%, but it's a second, which means you do have to repay it if you refinance or if you sell the home. Versus this, if you qualify, it's $25,000 in essentially, and I hate to say this, free money.
Well, we've had something like this in the past.
We do, but they normally run out, right? Those grants, and they're not 25
So Aurora
grand.
Hope was notorious for running out, right? But Adams County had one. They were percentages most of the time, not amounts. So I think they
Yes.
would go up to 6%. So roughly 25 grand, sometimes it's higher, and that's why they were running out of money. So to give it a flat 25, I mean, I guess they can project a little bit easier, the budgeting on how much. I mean, it's $40 billion. I don't know. I was trying to. Again, I was doing numbers last night. I was trying to calculate what that looked like per state. Like, I don't think Alaska's going to need a whole lot of this.
Yeah.
And it would give, I think, $800 million to Colorado. What did that look like? Breakdown first-time home buyers.
Yep.
And again, I think that's going to segue to a lot of the stuff
Yeah.
that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So if you want to talk about the amount, right? The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, it would distribute about $175 billion.
Yep.
for this grant program. So to reiterate,
I thought it was a $40 billion
well, no. So this is what they
fund.
think.
So
Yes.
So overall, what you're talking, two different things. Oscar, what you're talking about overall is the overall fund, the amount of money that would be in the pool to then pull for that 25,000.
The 40 billion is on the other side of this coin for this plan, and that is to subsidize with tax credits and incentives the local municipalities and builders to relax zoning laws and build affordable housing. And the 40 billion.
And I was going to say, and we'll get
The 175 billion is for the $25,000 credit. So to reiterate, it's $25,000 grant. It is forgivable, which means you do not have to pay it back as long as you meet the requirements, which you have to make less than 120% of the area median income that you're buying in. You have to be a first-time home buyer or a first-generation home buyer, which means you cannot have owned or signed on a mortgage over the last 3 years. You have to take a home education class. It has to be a primary residence. And you have to live in that residence for a minimum of 5 years. If you do not and you sell it, part of those proceeds will go to repaying that grant.
Yep.
So,
and one major element that this policy is trying to implement as well is something that we've seen a lot of media attention over, and they want to try and use this to also mitigate and create more competition for the normal American versus companies like BlackRock, big investor companies, to try and stop them from being able to come in and buy these homes. And that leads us into the con, what I think is the largest con of this.
Well, I was going to say, why don't you guys just tell me what your thoughts are as far as how this plays out if this gets passed?
Yeah.
If this comes into fruition, what do you guys think?
Oscar, I'm interested to hear yours, especially because you've been through, I mean, in your tenure as a realtor, you've been through probably 4 different things like this.
I mean, it helps. I've always been an advocate of, the consumer leveraging their money, but at the same time putting some skin in the game too. I mean, it's important for pride of home ownership. So in the past, they've worked great. I dealt with a lot of first-time home buyers, and it's a very good program. As I've grown older, economically, I always want to know where the money's coming from, because I mean, the thing that stands out the most to me, it's $1.7 trillion, that's going to be tacked onto our deficit. As a realtor, as a business owner, I want to help my consumer. As an advocate for the consumer, that's the number one reason I became a real estate agent. But again, I want to help the consumer because it is my business. I want to make sure that there is no downside to this, or we run out of money, or there's a way to tap into it, or we can't, or right? Because when you're dealing with this, the incentive, they incentivize the builder that they're able to build, but a certain percentage of the homes within a big complex have to be affordable housing, right? And then they go through these guidelines. Well, that's where it falls through, because people can't fit those guidelines. So I say loosen that up. Outside of bringing in the money, but I think this will allow the consumer to purchase without having to put a lot of money in. But I think the problem still lies in affordability on price point, because they'll give them the $25,000, but can we use it to buy down the rate? It's the payments the problem, because they're purchasing at a much higher price point at this moment than we were back in 2007 when these were around. In 2007, 25 grand would go a long way, but you were buying a $200,000 single family house.
And my question becomes too is how much are, to your point, how much are you able to utilize this? Because first time home buyers, a lot of the time they're putting 3.5% down. So if I can, as a first time home buyer, if they can do that on top of, if that 25,000 goes on top of their standard 3.5, that's going to help them with those monthly payments. But it doesn't specify how you can utilize it.
I think it's going to be a more narrow demographic it's going to help, because of the fact of affordability is not there.
It's not.
This is not helping with affordability. It's helping with purchasing. But what can you purchase if you can't afford it?
Well, and that's where kind of
like for you, it would be perfect.
Yes, and
because go get a townhome for a starter. You don't have a family yet. You don't want to go home, mow lawns, or you're going to work on your business. Charlie has a very successful production business. It's growing. Your wife has her. Whoa, I said wife.
Not
Your
yet, but we're getting
fiance has her. her career. You guys are growing. You have your established, first house. You get the assistant. You can afford it. You could get it, and then from there you grow, right?
Yep.
Then you have equity, and then you get your forever home, whatever the case may be. But I think, although the 25 grand is good, I like it. I don't understand how we're going to get there, just make up the money. But outside of that, there's still the problem, at least in the Denver metro area, the affordability problem, that prices are so high that, yes, you could give them 25 grand, but can they still afford it?
Well,
because that's not going to help with the
and I was
going to
say, and Oscar, that leads me into, for me, how I feel about it. 100%. Yes. Up front, guys, this is great for me.
Give me 25 grand.
If this were to go through, this could open up the door for me in a way that my fiance and I don't have the opportunity for right now. It could definitely help. But where I get concerned, again, I'm right there with you, Oscar, is affordability and inventory. Because the big issue, even with, in the episode we were talking about with interest rates, holding interest rates down, when we're in a market that we're 15 years behind inventory, the only thing that allowing more people to buy homes is going to do is increase the cost of the home, because more people are going to go in, more money is going to be put in, the home price is going to go up. So it's a double-edged sword where it's great and it'll be wonderful. In a place like Colorado, it might hurt the overall market even more for future home buyers, and then we might have to do a $50,000 to make up for it. And we talked about this many times. In the United States, home prices over a 10-year period only increase, whether that's a 2%, 3% rate. The United States home values only go up over an extended period of time. So by doing something like this and basically adding a housing stimulus and giving it to everybody, it's going to make it more affordable, but then it's going to bolster competition with an already limited inventory.
Is it really going to make? It's not going to make it any more affordable. It's just going to assist you with the ability to purchase. Well, that's where I'm going with it. And again, so a part of this incentive, or a part of what they're doing here, the $40 billion that I was talking about, is also rent control.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think, yes, their mind is gearing towards the right way, but we're here. Unless there's some kind of downfall, prices are going to hold somewhat steady.
Especially if they did over the last 2 years.
Yeah, even if it drops 15%, that still doesn't make it affordable. And let's say in your case, you do buy a nice condo or townhome. You're real estate savvy now. You're probably going to want to rent it out.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're going to put a kibosh on that on you.
Yep.
So then you're going to sell it, and what is that good? It's not. So I think a lot of these policies have good intention, but are they really well thought out? I'm sure they're smarter people than I am in there, and they have their reasoning. But at the end of the day, I'm going to say it. What's their agenda? Get the votes. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What about you, Jamie? What are you thinking?
Where's my Morgan Wallen fans at? He's got a song, and it's called Band-Aid on a Bullet Hole. The premise is you get shot. You put a Band-Aid over it to make it look pretty. Doesn't solve the problem that you have a bullet somewhere in your torso and you're slowly bleeding out.
God,
right?
Yeah.
Damn it! I thought you were gonna go and just contradict everything I just said, but I love it.
No, me
love it.
personally, and I'll go with some stronger language. I
love
hate
it.
this plan.
Yeah.
I'll come out and say it. I think this is a horrible idea. And I think it's a horrible idea to tie into what both of you guys are talking about. The plan itself, if you read through what their projection is, they are saying that the plan will help 4 million first-time homebuyers over the course of the 4 years of the term, okay? We are down anywhere between, depending on who you talk to, 1 and 4 million housing units. So we're already short. Let's call it, split the difference, right? Let's call it 1.5 to 2 million homes short. We're going to give 4 million home buyers the opportunity to purchase these houses. We're still 2.5 million short. So all that's going to do is it is going to increase competition for a very scarce commodity, which is housing, right? And anytime you've got a lot of people chasing few goods, you get inflation, right? So that's number one. So to Oscar's point, it's going to kill affordability. And you're talking about it as in home prices are high now, so yeah, $25,000 is great. But if home prices are already unaffordable, it doesn't really help much. Well, this to me only exacerbates that even more, because to your point, you're just going to flood the market with qualified home buyers that are competing now in mass for the same amount of inventory. So we're not fixing the problem, which is the bullet hole. We're putting a pretty Band-Aid and waving $25,000 in people's faces and be like, hey, you don't have to pay this back. Here's 25 grand.
I think,
go buy a house.
and I think the more important part to focus on, and you touched on it, and we kind of just graze by it though is we need to start doing more incentivizing for builders. And we've
No,
talked
but
about this
that's my
multiple
point.
times.
This particular idea of a $25,000 grant for first-time homebuyers and first-generation homebuyers, I get the intent, but to your point, Oscar, when you say, "Well, there's got to be smarter people," there's not.
Well, no, it's
Right.
literally
There's not, because-
they're looking at the numbers, not at the actual application. They're going,
Right.
oh, everybody's struggling. Let's give them money here. Yeah, but again, what does it do to the inventory?
Correct. Now,
And-
if they can attack it, right, and then that's what we're going to talk about next. That's a different story.
Yep.
But to just put the Band-Aid on it and say, "Hey, we're going to give you 25 grand," all it's going to do is it's going to be a vicious cycle of more home buyers, higher home prices, more incentives for more home buyers, and higher prices. And it's just going to spiral
Yep.
out of control, right? Like there's something called the inflationary pricing spiral, where essentially, or the wage growth spiral, right? It's a death spiral, where essentially what happens is you've got companies that pay their workers a certain amount, and then those workers want a raise, right? So then the workers get a raise, but in order to pay for that, the company now has to increase the cost of goods. So now they give your congratulations, you are getting paid $3 more an hour, but your goods now cost $3 more per good. Well, now they have to pay them even more to keep up with the price of the product, but then they have to pay them more to then keep up with the price of the product, and it just turns into this death spiral.
Economics, baby.
It turns into a death spiral, right? And then it is very hard to recover.
Yeah. There's a
absent a complete collapse of a certain job market or something like that.
real good example on Economics for Dummies that
Yep.
that I picked up that talks about that and how to kind of counteract that.
Right.
But
You got to
you're
break
right.
something though, right?
Yeah.
And the housing market is the exact same. If you give more people access to the same amount of housing, it's going to drive the price of the housing up. Now, in order for those same people that had access to it to afford the higher price housing, you have to give them more incentives. Well, now when you give them more incentives, you bring more buyers in, and you still have the same amount of housing, and it just turns into this death spiral. It's very hard to break.
And look at that segue. So
So
next,
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that kind of maybe we're going the same route, but
Yeah. So
what
the
would
next-
be a clear cut solution to our problem?
well, and that's where
Like, let's be kind of morbid about it.
Well, no, and that yes, we need a big
Thanos.
generation to go away.
Thanos.
We need a big generation to go
Bill
away.
Burr just had a hilarious stand-up where he's like, you know what? The problem with these politics is you got to get voters. Nobody can come out and say, my plan is we got to get rid of 85% of you. There's a multiple choice test under
Or
your
there's a
seat.
better way, a more humane way.
Euthanasia?
Securing our borders.
We'll get
Immigration
there.
problem.
We'll get there. We'll get there. So
And that was just my aha during this conversation because, again, I never looked at it in that.
Well,
line.
let's talk about
So,
the first
yeah.
thing because
Yeah.
I actually disagree with you
yes,
on that.
we're gonna get there.
Hold
We're
on,
gonna get
hold
there.
on, and I got more.
All right. So the second policy that we want to address, and this is actually shared by both parties, and the topic is the use of federal land for residential development. And I will tell you guys, and I say it all the time, the hippie in me, the nature lover in me, the first thing I think about is Colorado being 32% of the land is federal land. And we have the Rocky Mountains, we have San Juan Mountains, we have Pikes Peak, we have the Great Sand Dunes, all this federal land that's here. And I was going, don't you fucking touch that. I don't care how
I'm
you
an
do it.
outdoorsman. I'll be
Don't-
the first one to
right?
be pissed.
Hey,
and
and I'm gonna preface this. So, the agency that governs federal land is the Bureau of Land, Management.
Yes.
Heretofore to be to be stated as BLM,
Yes.
not Black Lives Matter. So, keyboard warriors, shut up.
Yep.
It's the Bureau of Land,
Land
Management,
Yes.
BLM.
And if you're
Bacon,
campers,
lettuce, mayo.
and I was going to say, and if you guys are campers, Bureau of Land Management does an amazing thing where they actually have land that they manage, they keep clean. There's little porta potties on it, or even open land that you can look up on your phone and go camp, drive onto the land, camp there. If you do that, please be respectful of it, especially here in Colorado, because they're diminishing the amount because people are not respecting it.
Well, I mean, there was a headline that has to do with this, but they're loosening federal land, and most of that people don't want to live out there.
Yeah.
That was the biggest problem. But again, there was another one that says that the United States is not a museum. They got to loosen up on a lot of these historic things. Yes, we want to keep them. We have to keep records, but it's also impeding on housing.
Yeah,
And I think that's the zoning that we need.
Yeah,
we
and
need
I
to
think
work
that's
on.
where So on top of the federal lands, the other portion of this is they want to give a little bit more power back to the local municipalities, the state governments, to make these decisions and make it easier, remove roadblocks to then change zoning laws to allow for building in certain areas. And we've talked about this before. Like just for example, Boulder here in Colorado for the first time last year, first time in the last 75 years, just loosen some of their building restrictions and zoning laws to add more homes. Now, what I want to do is kind of just tell you how this works, because again, the first time I heard this, reactionary Charlie went, "Don't you fucking touch my federal land! Don't touch my woods!"
But it's not even a hippie thing.
Right?
It's
Like,
I'm about it.
yeah, but,
you know,
but that's what I mean. Like I
angler.
heard that and I went, "Don't touch it!" Right? But how it works, and we've actually recently just seen this out in Nevada. They will not go and seize the land. The federal government, it's not eminent domain, so they will not go in and say, "Hey, you have to give us this." Basically, how it works is the state works with the federal government, and the state then sells that federal land to the government at a discounted price. Then that government, and in the agreement, it is stated that they have to build a certain amount of properties or it is dedicated for affordable housing or whatever it may be. So they are not going in and just taking federal land. They go through, and it is a sale process, just like a regular real estate process, where they have to go through their checks and balances with it and make sure that it's not only not going to hurt the local nature or land, but then it's also going to benefit in some kind of a way. And so, Jameson, we talked about this before the podcast, but how does that look, and what does that look like? Are we actually going to be able to have enough to buy enough land federally to make a dent?
I mean, so there's two parts, right? The simple answer is no, but I think it's for two different reasons. One, Oscar just pointed out, a lot of the federal land, even though it's not like national park protected or anything like that, is removed from any sort of amenities that most people buying a single family home would want, right?
Major
if you think
cities,
about,
definitely.
Yeah, if you think about who wants to buy a single family home, it's people that are starting a family. Well, if you're starting a family, what do you want? You want good schools. You want parks. You want grocery stores. You want
growth in
convenience,
general,
right? You want convenience. So if you turn around and buy up a piece of land 60 miles outside of Las Vegas, for example, right? And you say, okay, and this is a real life thing in Clark County, they bought 20 acres at a huge discount, and they built 210 single family homes that you could only purchase if you made less than $70,000 a year. But it's out in the middle of nowhere. And that's 210 homes versus the 4 million that we need, right? So I think that's yes, it's an option, but I think you have to be very strategic, because now you have to convince developers to go in and purchase that land, right? Because what you don't want to have happen is them to go in, you want to have a developer, finance a bunch of homes being built, and then all of a sudden nobody moves there, and now that developer is de-incentivized to build anywhere else because he's not making money because they're not turning over that land, right?
It's not even about greed. He's going to lose his ass off.
Exactly. No,
He's
that's
gonna
the
go
point.
bankrupt.
That's the point. Yeah. So I think it's an option. I don't think it's the end all be all solution, right? If you look at, I've gotten this argument on TikTok a couple times from people that it's a good point that they bring up, and I think this would probably be the better way to do it. But right now, there's 15 million vacant homes in the United States.
Yep.
Right? Most of those are in economically divested areas. Think, Mississippi, rural Mississippi, outside of St. Louis, outside of Kansas City, Louisiana, Baton Rouge, those areas. But there's just no incentive for developers to go in there and flip those houses. But if you imagine, if you could incentivize...
Who owns those properties?
I don't know. I'd have to dig into it. I mean...
Generally...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's... Yeah. Let's see.
Because I had a very heated conversation with another realtor about the unfairness of there's buildings, and again this goes back to zoning, buildings that are just vacant and they're vacant, and she had argued that we need to go after this guy because he has this building that's vacant. Well, what if he doesn't have either the means or a good plan to put that building to best use? Right now he's just collecting the depreciation on it while he, makes it work. What gives any of us the right to say, hey, your investment, you have to do this? No, go in and say, hey, let's incentivize this guy. You're taking depreciation. Let us go in. will redevelop your building for housing and take the liability of that away from you and let you gain some income or something. Incentivize these people, not just go in and say, hey, you're a bad guy, we hate you, we're slitting your throat, we're taking your stuff. You know, that's not the way we work here in the United States. So that's why I asked who owns these, because maybe incentivize the people that own it.
Well, I'll tell you because I found it.
Because he's
So
the stat
here's
guy.
a breakdown of the 15 million. You got about 3.8 million are for rent, just not occupied, right? Most likely because of the conditions. So they're owned by landlords, whether that's investment banks, mom and pop, single family. You know what I mean? They're just owned by individuals, right? Rented but not occupied makes up 400,000.
What do you mean rented but not occupied?
Like they're rented out, but
No one's living there.
nobody's living there.
Wow.
1.2 million are for sale and most likely cannot sell due to
Location.
or condition, right? And that's by sellers. Seasonal, recreational, and occasional use, those are all the second
VRBO.
homes,
Yeah.
right? So it's 4.3 million. That's a big chunk. And then this will tie into your immigration thing. 26,000 are owned by migrant workers. Very, very teeny tiny. And then other vacant, which is essentially abandoned, bank-owned, condemned, is 3.4 million units.
Yeah.
So if you look at the for rent but not rented and the other vacant, that makes up 7 million, which, I mean, there's our housing shortage right there. If
Right
you
there.
can incentivize people to go in there. Now, the problem is, and this is why it gets tricky, is you have to incentivize on a whole. Because I can give you, let's say you're a developer, right, or a house flipper. I say, hey, I'm going to give you a bunch of tax credits. Go into the suburbs of St. Louis, and I want you to rehab these houses so we can sell them to people or rent them out, right? But nobody's going to move there if the rest of the economic platform isn't there. If there's no foundation, no jobs, no schools, abandoned businesses, et cetera, you can rehab those houses all you want. Nobody's going to move there, so there's no incentive for somebody to actually do it.
And it's not even because when it comes down to housing your family, you do what you need to do. I mean, I know a lot of people that commute from the Springs into Denver and vice versa.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, that could be an hour to 2 hour drive each way every day. But we're talking about these places being 4 or 5 hours away from any major, you know, infrastructure.
Or
you're
you
not
have
you're
entire
not going to have
entire
a
neighborhoods.
What
you're
if
not
they-
going to have a job
What if
to
they
be able to
gave
go out there.
incentives- What if they gave incentives to homeowners that allowed rent to own?
Well, no, you can do rent to own.
But that's what. But what if they? But
It doesn't. I don't think it matters because the areas that these people talk about with these, not the 4 million vacation homes,
Yeah.
but the rest of them either for sale, unoccupied, for rent, unoccupied, or other vacant, which makes up almost 8 million houses.
Yep.
They are concentrated in areas that currently nobody would choose to move to.
And then the
Would
vacation.
it be
homes in
like, for
itself,
example, and I'm not talking stuff because I know some people from there, but that just comes to mind. Rifle's far. Rifle, it's
Yeah, but-
Grand Junction or whatever. That's 3-4 hours. That's unrealistic to try to commute daily to live there and still have a stable job.
Well,
yeah,
and
but
then-
so
and
here's
there's no
the-
jobs to be
But
had
here's
out
the
there.
caveat with these vacant homes, right? It's kind of like we talked about where the most rental homes are. They're in Atlanta for a specific reason,
Yeah.
right? Well, the vacant homes are concentrated in areas. So it's not like you've got 100.
They're not scattered.
Exactly. So what ends up happening is, and for till the day I die, I will remember this Uber ride in St. Louis to the airport, and we drove through
I never
this,
remember my Uber rides.
this suburb, right, of St. Louis, probably maybe 15 minutes outside the city, and it was blocks of row houses where you probably had, I don't know, 700-800 units in this couple city blocks. Of those 700 or 800, maybe 1% were either occupied or in a condition to be occupied. So when you have that large of a block, it's not about going into 5 Points and picking out some of the disadvantaged houses, fixing them up, and then flipping them. You're talking about going into entire city blocks and having to spend the money and the time and the energy to revitalize that. All the while, all the auxiliary economic foundation around that city block is also non-existent because nobody lives there.
And then you also have the conversation where a lot of people say, yeah, well, that 4.6 of vacation rentals and stuff like that. One thing that I want to remind you guys of is, like, if you think about places up here like Breckenridge, Aspen, they're tourist destinations. And if those towns did not have those rentals
Correct.
to bring people in, that is more than 2/3 of their entire economy gone.
Correct.
So, like, it's not as simple as just, oh, these greedy people have rentals.
Right.
Some towns and some places rely on these rentals just to survive.
Right.
So like
Yeah.
you know it.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
And there's no more. Where are you going to build?
Yep.
It is hard to build in these ski resort communities.
Absolutely.
You know.
On the side of a mountain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even more.
If you
even
think
more
it's hard
difficult.
to, costly to build on something flat, you can go try to do it on a topography of just
Yeah. Straight down.
straight down. It's not going to happen. And
Absolutely.
I mean, the infrastructure to get up there is just ridiculous.
And that's the whole thing, guys. Is all of these again, and we still have one more to talk about, but all of these again are ideas, right? And unfortunately, we can't figure out the solution without cracking a couple eggs, without going through it and seeing what works. Because what they've been doing the last couple years, trying to bend and break the housing market, didn't work. Because again, we're at this weird balancing point where there are people who can afford homes, but a lot of people can't afford homes. So when the people who can afford homes buy the homes, takes out the inventory from the people who can't afford it, which then drives the price up. It's a weird amalgam and a weird time that we're going through right now. But at least the conversations are being had. That, for me, is the overall, like, at least these are the conversations.
Well, here's to your point, just to back up what you said, Charlie.
Yeah.
5 of the top 10 counties with the highest concentration of seasonal, recreational, or occasional use vacant homes are in Florida.
Yeah.
Okay. The other 2, Riverside, California, Ocean, New Jersey, and then Maricopa County, Arizona. Right? So that's where the concentration is, versus if you go to the concentration of the others, you're talking Harris County, Texas. You're talking Clark, Nevada, Queens, New York. Like, it's concentrated in very specific areas.
And if you
which is
haven't
why
been to
it's
Queens,
hard. It's a
it's-
hard thing to fix.
You don't want to live in those.
Because you
houses.
can't have one without the other. You can't build houses and then not build anything else, because it doesn't entice people to come in there and live.
All right. So, is there anything else you guys want to touch on? Because I'm excited to get to the last one that we're going to talk about.
I don't know.
Anything
I could beat this one up like
Okay.
from so many different angles.
The one thing I will say is the other part of this is zoning. Right?
Yes.
And zoning is important because everybody wants their half-acre picket fence, yada, yada, yada. And we've had this conversation on the podcast in the past. It's the haves versus the have-nots, right? The only way to build, or the only way to fix the problem, is more inventory. That is it. You need more inventory because the population, it's slowing down, but not at the rate it needs to. You need more inventory. And the only way to build more inventory is to loosen up the process that builders and developers go through to get permits. And then you have to loosen up the process of how many units.
Wait a minute. I think I talked about this on a prior podcast.
How many units you
have my
can
freaking
build
memorandum that I put together on my phone at 3 a.m.
in a certain area to include housing, including affordable housing. But a lot of people make the argument that, well, Littleton, for example, is allowing ADUs, so auxiliary dwelling units on house lots that are larger than a quarter of an acre.
Hell, Adams County. That's part of the.
The problem is they're so damn expensive to build that if you rent them out, it still doesn't make any sense. Like, at all. The average ADU in Seattle, Washington, to build 1,200 square foot, 1 bed, 1 bath, ADU in somebody else's yard. The average cost to build it is $450 a square foot. The average sale price of those, $875,000.
So, but let me ask you guys a question: Who controls zoning laws?
Counties.
Local governments and municipalities.
Local governments, municipalities, but who controls?
Voted on by the constituency.
Thank you. So that's again, guys. We the people. There's a reason why the Constitution starts with "we the people." They've pulled the veil. They've done a beautiful job of going, hey, focus on this. Look up here. Don't worry about this down here. But fixing something as simple as zoning laws is you going around and talking to your neighbors, going to your HOA meeting and saying, hey guys, we could do this, and if we do this, this could add value to our home prices because this could open up for this. That is why it's so important, regardless of which side. Please be invested. Read. Look at what's on your ballots, because these little things in your town can completely change the outcome if we all understand that if we come together and do it, we could fix the problem.
I mean, and I think we need to get over a few things with the zoning too, because that headline that said we are not a museum. Yeah, let's document that. Let's throw things in museums, but at the same time, are we gonna, there's certain buildings that we could probably build over, like Jameson said, where it's a lack of inventory. One, zoning and allowing us maybe not go to the middle of nowhere to acquire land, if we have land here that we're just super protective over, at what cost? Let's balance it out. Let's house some people, and incentivize the builders, because you're making it harder for the builder to build. One, so that's a lot they have to jump through, and two, you're making it expensive for them. Obviously, no one's going to do it for free. The government's not doing it. Why do you expect your average Joe that has built a construction company to go do it? He has employees, he has overhead. Most of the builders, T. Harv Eker talks about his dad being a developer, and there was times of like he had tons of money, and then he'd go buy a plot of land, and they were broke again.
Well, look at Art. We had Art on the podcast two shows ago, 3 shows ago, and he legit sat here and told us to our faces, I just wrote a check for $130,000 and I lost money. Like, that's exactly what you're talking about, and that is a person that was sitting right here. That's not BlackRock.
That's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, you guys ready to move into the next one?
Yeah. And
All
then
right.
Jameson said, we need to build stuff. I'm like, we need to keep people out or kill them. I'm just kidding. I didn't say that. I did not say that.
Oh, that's gonna be the one clip.
It's Halloween. I love everyone. Everybody knows I love
All right,
everyone. I
guys,
want no one to die. I don't. But
so the last policy that we're going to touch on here is the policy of immigration and limiting immigration to then lessen the strain on housing inventory and the housing market as a whole. And the one thing, and I feel that is my civic duty to start this conversation out by saying directly to you, illegal and undocumented immigrants.
Well, hold on. It's not what you're about to say isn't as black and white as you think.
But that I'm going to explain it. Okay? So
I think it
here-
depends on people's definition.
Listen to the terminology, okay? Illegal and undocumented immigrants cannot buy property in the United States of America. Now, to Jameson's point, can an immigrant come into the United States and purchase a home? The answer is yes. But in order to do that, they have to register with the country and attain a tax number, kind of like we have a Social Security number. They have to attain a tax number. And once they do that, they are not undocumented immigrants. They are documented immigrants. All right.
I'm going to take it a little bit further, because there is a way to do it.
Yeah.
It's called foreign investor. In most countries, you have to be U.S. Citizen of the country or some kind of resident, not in the United States. You could legit not be any of those. As long as you pay Uncle Sam 30%, you can own property here in the United States. It's when when you apply for a loan that it makes it hard. You could be illegal as hell. If you have cash, you can own property here. The legalities come on the lending side
Correct.
of purchasing real estate. You can be a foreign investor. I got audited for my CE credits, and I needed one elective, and I took foreign investments. The government will charge you 30 capital gains,
FRPTA.
30%. And that's where FRPTA comes, right? Because they were selling
It's
and
on
they were
the
trying
sales
to get away. So it's always been, FRPTA's been there forever.
Yeah,
it's just
it's on-
highlighted now more.
the sales contract.
So you can, but in order to get a loan, then it starts coming into the legal realm of it. As long as you pay our government, there's people that have the kiddie condos. Their kids come to college here, and they're from other countries. They own that, and then they leave, they graduate, and then they sell
But
it.
my whole point is, it has to be on the books.
Yeah.
It has to be known. That's my whole point with it is my only gripe is that the rhetoric that is immigrants are crossing the border, not doing anything, and they are able to then just buy a home. It's
hard.
It's very it's not. I can't. I'm sorry.
Okay,
it's
so
not
there's
that way.
since we're on the topic, there's a few ways that an immigrant can buy a home. One, obviously, become a resident alien or U.S. citizen. Another one is a renewable work. It's like a visa, but it's like a temporary Social Security, and you could buy with
That's
that.
that's the ITIN number.
No, and then there's the ITIN number.
Yep.
So there's a renewable permit that they can get, and they get like a Social Security number, and banks treat that like a normal social because it's renewable, and you got to have a history, and you're going to stay here and all that stuff. Because the banks, again, it's on the lending side, and then the ITIN number it's been an ongoing thing. There was a time where Banco Popular of Mexico and BBVA here had an agreement that if they held money or assets with one bank, they would allow for them to purchase, but it was at a ridiculous rate, a ridiculous down payment. You had to have 20 to 30% down, and your rate, if our rates were, let's say back then they were at a 4 or 5%, their rates were going at a 12 to 14%. So it was very expensive, and it was very hard to acquire. But most of the immigrants that were coming here were coming to work, and a lot of them needed or wanted housing, and they had mattress money. That was another step of a hurdle to go over, because in other countries they don't trust their financial institutions, and they keep cash. Where, there's only a handful of countries that you can actually leverage your cash and get loans for your house. You have to buy them outright in other countries. They're not as expensive, but whatever. So you had, I was part of a Chaffa group that had an incentive to use mattress money. So anyway, long story short, there's a lot of hurdles you can't just get a loan just like that, even if you have an ITIN number, because it's super stupid expensive. They've loosened that up. There is other ways to do it. If they need financing, they're not going to get a loan to purchase a house. To your
and again, it just all comes back to there has to be some kind of documentation.
Well, I guess
some kind of registration to it.
We just need to go to the question.
Yes.
Okay. What is you guys' opinion about, well, either deporting or just severely limiting immigration? Is that going to help affordability in the housing market?
Affordability?
Well, that's the whole point.
Is
The point is, how do I solve housing affordability? And one of the answers is we're going to cut down on inflation, and we're going to halt illegal immigration.
Again, I looked at illegal immigration in a different light, but if we're talking about trimming the fat in all sectors of real estate, there's a factor of that too. Not so much in the fact that they're purchasing the homes, but they're housing somewhere, whether it's a rental or not. So it all ties into real estate. So
but I'm talking housing affordability.
Right, but it all trickles. It all
house.
trickles in because there's no rentals, there's no purchases, or there's little purchases and rentals are going up. So it kind of ties in. Is it going to make a huge impact? I don't think so. Not at all.
I don't. Yeah, I don't think that there's.
You just wait. Hold on.
No,
Wait.
I said if we're talking about
You said you had your aha moment. What's your aha moment?
that there was a correlation to housing and immigrants.
That's not an aha moment. That's like a
No, because
I want the aha moment. Oscar.
No. I'm first generation Mexican American. First and foremost, American heritage, Mexican. So I see it in a different limelight. I see it in a very ugly way because it was part of my heritage. I had no ties in real estate to it, so my feelings were not there in real estate. But if you think about, does it affect real estate? Absolutely, because people are coming here, and now it's not the Mexicans we're talking about. It's about the other cultures that are coming here, and the ones that are spotlighted. But they're still housing somewhere, and I think that does affect, in the grand scheme of things, that does affect our real estate some way. So if we're trimming the fat everywhere, that might be somewhere that has some effect as well.
Here's where my brain goes with it. I don't think that the amount of immigrants coming into the country affects affordability as much, only because affordability is an across-the-board statistic. It's not like these immigrants are coming in and then they're automatically able to, and they have the money to just beat out most of Americans. They just become part of the purchasing pool, right? And from there, if affordability was lower and it was easier to buy the home, then I would see a little bit more. But where I do agree, I think that we need more regulation around immigration to the point where it is easier to track the amount coming in. We need more documentation. We need more just overall information and data on that fact. I don't overall think that
I have data.
The immigrants coming in to the United States are going to drive affordability up or affect our inventory in a way that it is being positioned for this policy.
I'll tell you right now, the percentage that, first and foremost, they're not beating anybody out. because in order for them to buy, it's ridiculously hard.
Yeah.
They're not beating anybody out, so they're not in the pool of competition of driving up prices. I think the majority of them are in the rental sector of it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we need to look at what how they're affecting the housing market.
Yeah.
So here's the thing about the whole immigration, right? I'm trying not to get political, but at the end of the day,
Well, you're Jewish. It's okay.
it's
What?
no. Apparently, I am from
He's a libertarian Jew.
an island in the middle of the Atlantic that is a pile of garbage. So
Yep. Yeah,
that's where I'm from.
No. Again, ancestral. You're Jewish.
I'm not.
He's like this much Puerto Rican.
50%. It's fine.
No.
And I'm the other 50% Spanish, but yeah.
And they're 50% Jewish.
Okay.
Works
Anyway.
100% of the time, 50% of the time.
Anyway,
All right, give us the stats. Steph.
back to immigration. So rents have increased over the last 2 years. If this argument was true, right, and immigrants had an effect on rental prices, then immigration also increased over the last 2 years. But that's not what's happened.
Oh God, please tread lightly here, because it's, I'm with you. I'm there, and I'm happy that you have the statistics. But this is such a pain point in the overall conversation around immigration. So can you please give me the numbers, the true statistics over
It
the
can't be
last
pain
2
point
years?
if I say it. You want me to say it? I mean,
Well, the reason I say
No.
it's a pain point is because whenever you bring this up, as far as the numbers of immigrants that have came
So this
through,
is just from the U.S.-Mexico border, and this is documented encounters, both legal and illegal, okay, from the Border Patrol. So these are the guys that are patrolling said borders. January of 2022, they saw almost 160,000 immigrants crossing into the United States at the borders. August of 2024, 58,000.
again,
Now, you can't tell me.
subjective because those are people they see.
Doesn't matter. So you can't tell me that that they got so smart that all of a sudden they've built over the last 2 years this network of just tunnels like DIA, and all of a sudden we went from seeing 150,000 a month to 57,000 a month because the other 100,000 are crossing somewhere else,
and we just can't find them.
and we just can't find them, even though we know where the borders are. Like,
I
no.
mean,
No.
for the people that can't see, I'm raising my hands. I don't know because you mean to tell me they're trafficking through the borders and our bridges a whole lot of drugs?
What?
They're smuggling the people the same way they're smuggling the drugs into this country.
Yeah.
They don't see a majority of that.
But
The immigration crossing is very subjective because it might be lower, it might be higher. A
Okay,
lot of the people,
okay,
I mean,
hold on. But to your
okay,
point-
if they're recording these people, you don't think they're stopping them?
let me go. Okay, let me
There's
go
a
them back.
huge percentage that
Yes,
are
I'll-
going under the radar,
I'll give that to you. There,
whether it's tunnels or
Right.
There's a
There's,
percentage.
I get there's a percentage,
Yes.
but there's not.
but then also we just got done talking about how difficult it is for them to affect the housing market, either buying a home, rent, whatever it is. So even if those people that aren't being found, how are they renting? How are they going in and buying the home? How are they renting the home? How are they affecting it if they're if we don't know?
Okay, so if you go to North Denver on the corner of 32nd and Tejon, there's a laundromat.
Mm-hmm.
They're falsifying all kinds of social security numbers and all kinds of other shit. It happens, dude. It just happens. There's so many ways around that. Whether especially in the rental side, I mean, you don't really need a whole lot. Some of the quote unquote slumlords, you got money, they're going to give you the place.
But honestly, I love it. I love the fact that this is the conversation, because this is exactly why we brought this up. This is exactly why we had this topic, because talking about it and being open and understanding, reading the statistics, taking in the viewpoints and talking to other people is the only way that we will come together and control it, is by having these conversations, is by understanding both sides and understanding where these things could lead.
And before it goes any further, it's not just the Mexicans. The Mexican part is the only way that are coming in. No one's coming in from Canada. It's not the Mexican people. There's people from all over the world coming through the Mexican border.
Yes.
So please leave the Mexicans
Yes.
alone.
Got any?
They're hardworking people.
Got any other statistics for us on it, J-Mo?
no, I'll let it lie.
Hey, let it
That's a
lie.
very
All right.
touchy subject.
No,
it
it
really
honestly
is. And
It is.
there's no, at the end of the day, yes, we could be fiscally this and libertarian, that whatever the case may be.
Also,
It's a touchy
why
subject.
am I the libertarian? I don't understand.
No one said libertarian. I was just messing with that at the beginning.
I'm
I didn't
libertarian.
just.
I'm Jewish. Like, I just don't like to be labeled. This is what I,
No,
this is-
but what I was going with that.
Hold up. This is what I'm going to say. Okay. I am a statistics guy for a reason, because like numbers, more often than not, don't lie. You can manipulate them, right? And you can frame them a certain way, but they don't lie. For example, the Venezuelan takeover of Denver. Okay.
God.
Let's just throw it out there.
Jeez, you're throwing out
Well,
some
hold on. No.
touchy subjects.
No. The reason I'm saying that is because, and you just pointed it out, right? If I go into Aurora, call it 225 in Mississippi today versus a year ago, what do I see more of?
Homeless people.
I see more homeless Venezuelans that are on the intersections wanting to wash your car windows. That's just a fact, right? Like, and if I just take that as, okay, this is gospel, these people weren't here last year when I drove this road, but now they're everywhere. That must mean immigration has increased tenfold, and now I'm just seeing the product of it in my city, where it's actually not the case. What ended up happening was those Venezuelans have been in the country for a couple of years, have been documented for a couple of years, and you had these stupid interstate wars where governors were busing immigrants to different states. And this specific faction of the Venezuelans that everybody's blowing out of proportion came from Texas.
Yeah, I was going to say
And
that. I
Governor
think it was like
Abbott,
100
who has
thousand of them.
openly said this is what he did, and they've done it to Minnesota, and they've done it to New York, and so on and so forth. But and this is why I think it's important. I want to touch on it, because as just a citizen that's going about my daily life, if I drive into Aurora and I all of a sudden see way more illegal or legal immigrants than I did a year ago, and then I go turn on the news and I have people yelling at me that people are taking over apartment complexes and we need to stop the flow, and they're making your housing and your rent less affordable, and then I equate that in my brain, so you know what, that actually makes sense because I did see all these people on the intersection, when in reality the actual macroeconomic portion of it is they were already in the country. They were just in a different area and they got bused to this area, and now you are seeing them in real life, and now that is connecting the dots to what you saw on the news headline, so on and so forth. That's the only reason.
Perception is
That's
reality.
the only reason I wanted to bring that up.
And again, it's a perfect storm, right? They see that you're going to see that visually, and now they're going to play that
Oh, yeah.
that rhetoric out,
Again, like I
and
said,
they're going to make you
perception is
believe it.
reality.
And if I'm not mistaken, a lot of the people that are bussed in, they're not illegal. They actually got status here.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
they're not illegal.
Exactly.
Right. They just
So
couldn't
they're
get
not
a
even
regular
they're,
job
you
because they
can't
don't
even
speak
count
the
them as
language,
illegal.
whatever.
They're
Yes.
legal
Yeah.
immigrants. So again, the
But
rhetoric
people
goes
don't
on and on
equate
and on.
legal immigrant
And-
with somebody wanting to wash my windows.
And we and that's a work problem, right? So that's a
Yeah.
whole other conversation.
Agreed. No, agreed.
And,
That's my point.
And at the end of the day, where I was going with it is that we could joke about it and then just try to tread lightly, but then it's a serious conversation. Love Jameson. He's actually not Jewish. I just think he looks like one of my favorite Jewish actors. But it's
Who is also a
at the end. He plays a Jewish guy, right? We could talk about business. We could talk about dollars, and at the end of the
Oscar,
day,
this sounds
we're
like
talking
it's
about
about to be a one rock takeaway.
no, but maybe. But at the end of the day, the violence and all that other stuff. Yeah, there's no room for that. But I did a lot of charitable work at a men's shelter called Father Woody's House of Hope, and I was doing it a lot consistently one year. And what really beat me up one year, because I did everything from work the kitchen to laundry and stuff, a family came in. And it was a father and his wife and his kid, and they just wanted a meal. It wasn't an overnight shelter. And I would like to go out and see how they made it to, how they got to there. And he was like, it's just luck, man. It's just we're down on our luck and everything. But he didn't really break his stride with he wanted his kid to still be happy. And watching that kid be homeless really, really beat me up. Mm-hmm. And it crushed me hard. When we talk about immigration and housing and homelessness, these are real people. Mm-hmm. It's a real problem.
They're humans.
They're human beings. They're not an item. They're not. I mean, it breaks my heart, and I wish we had a solution. And I try to tread lightly because I don't have a solution. I see a problem and a need that I don't have an answer or I can't fill it. you know, regardless whether, again, the violent part, yes, that we need to figure out. But I'm in and out of Aurora all the time. A lot of my business is in Aurora. I could name a ton of subdivisions in Aurora. I'm safe. I'm here. Is there violence? Yeah, but that it doesn't mean it's just one person. It's a lot. Have they taken? I don't know that, so I'm not going to touch on that. But at the end of the day, we got to be humanitarians here and feel this need that we have.
I love it. I think this is a much needed conversation, and I'm extremely grateful that I could sit here with both of you guys and talk through it with facts, with statistics, with information, and even opinion in some realm, and still come to a good conclusion on it. We're all gonna cheers here at the end. We're gonna continue to share bourbon together, and I think that is the epitome of why, you know, talking about these topics in the way that we do is needs to be had more, right? Mm-hmm. But on that note, let's go ahead and move into our one rock takeaway for today's episode. I'll go ahead and take it first, guys. If you didn't learn anything from the episode, if you were triggered in any kind of a way, if you're leaning one way or another, left, right, center, whatever it may be, just please understand that you're an American, regardless of how you feel. And as an American, you have the right to vote. You have the right to voice your opinion via your vote. And I know, as part of the generation that is one of the lowest voting generations in American history, and having a lot of friends that say, oh, I'm not voting, my vote doesn't count. The more we think about that, the more we lean towards that, the more your vote and your opinion will not count. So please take the opportunity, learn, research, talk to people of different opinions so you can expand your knowledge and your understanding. Go out and vote not only in a presidential election, but for your Congress, for your state and local municipalities, because we are blessed as Americans to have that input. That's my one rock takeaway.
I'm gonna do an ask. You know, our government works because we're two parties and we're not supposed to agree. And vote for whoever you want. It's none of my business, but vote. But please stop hating each other. There's no need for that. He could vote one way, he'll vote another way, and we all have different opinions. There's no reason to hate each other for that reason. I'm just asking, vote for whoever you want. Just stop hating each other for it.
Mm-hmm. Amen, brother.
My one rock takeaway is pay attention to the bullet hole and not the Band-Aid. Because I think what's happening in the rhetoric that we get, as divisive as it is, tends to, it's almost like a magician's act.
It's like a veil.
Right? Like, they want you to pay attention to something that sounds good, when in reality, like, the meat and potatoes of the problem is not being solved. And I've just kind of been disappointed as we've gone through all of the so-called plans from both parties, that none of them seem to really attack the root cause of the problem, which is how do we create more housing? And it's disappointing, right? Because you would like to assume that people in that level of government, that their entire job is to figure out these things, haven't yet come up with a solution. And it's scary, right? Because I look at it, and Oscar, you're in the same boat as I am. I got a daughter who's 5. By the time she wants to buy a house, she'll be 25. That's 20 years. In 20 years, the median price of a home could be $1.2 million. So I look at it and go, well, if we don't start solving this now, in 20 years, is she even going to have the opportunity to even think about purchasing a home if we don't figure this shit out? And what ends up happening as we get into election cycles, we just start to throw shit at a wall and see what sticks. And it's not a plan.
I think that's what they've been doing.
So make sure that when you guys are looking at these things, and to Charlie's point, you're voting on a local level, a state level, a national level, like, pay attention to the important stuff, right? Food, clothing, shelter. Like, those are the things that we need.
Basic necessities.
The basic necessities. Mm-hmm. And if it aligns with what you need, then vote that way. But make sure you do your research, because right now, if you go through the articles about housing inventory are buried underneath $25,000 free, illegal immigrants here, rent control here, zoning here. Like, it's buried. So just do due diligence. Understand that a magic show is a magic show, right? Chris Angel doesn't actually levitate.
What?
So
I'll tell you what, though, as long as nobody in the government tries to take our bourbon away again,
Oh,
we're gonna be all right. We gonna be all
They
right.
tried that once.
Yeah,
Didn't
you
work.
Pry
Didn't work too
it
much.
from my cold, dead fingers.
Didn't work too much. We're gonna lock down the Rouge and stay in here. But on that, guys, let's go ahead and move into our bourbon review for today's episode.
I mean, if you drink enough of this, I think you could levitate.
I don't know how to rate this.
And on today's episode, guys, just to reiterate, we are drinking Maker's Mark, their private selection. And what they do is they allow individuals and businesses to go in and choose specifically between 10 different staves to then create their own blend and flavor from their base Maker's Mark 46. And we're drinking what Chris Collins and the Rouge have chosen for their special. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get, if you guys are new to the podcast, if you're new watching, we do what's called a rock rating. So we rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the best, 10 being the worst, because the more rocks you put in a bourbon, usually the worse that bourbon is. So the closer to 1, the better the bourbon. Closer to 10, the worse the bourbon. And as always, even though the Rouge is our sponsor, we give you our honest takes on it. And Jameson kind of already prefaced what I was going to say. And this one's a little hard for me.
I don't know if I wasn't paying attention because, I mean, this topic was kind of all over the place, and I tried to do research, and then it got kind of emotional because, I mean, at the end of the day, my biggest gripe is, again, we're fighting each other. We're all Americans, and this bourbon was just like sipping pretty damn easy.
Yeah.
And like if I have to give it a rating, it was like a B+. That's not even on the chart.
Well,
it's kind of
no,
weird.
I think you make a good point because we talk about it all the time, right? You rate bourbon not only on the flavor and the taste of it, but the community. Can you sit down and have a conversation with somebody? Can you pour a couple glasses, talk about it? How does it make you feel? And for me, I think that if I was rating this bourbon on that scale, it would be higher. Only because, like you said, this conversation, it was perfect for the glass, for the pour, and the sips.
I kind of forgot that I was drinking it.
Yeah.
The drinkability is super easy.
Yes,
Like when you
absolutely.
said this is a dangerous bourbon, I was like, man, it's all right. I mean, it's going the tongue. I'm starting to get in there. You know, I was trying to get analytical and
No,
start the show.
This is the Jason Bourne of bourbons. Okay.
My God, it's just
It really did. Just I was drinking it. Literally, the burn is minimal.
if at
After
all.
you start drinking it,
Yeah.
none. The nose was no burn at all. Fresh out, no sip, nothing. As we talked, I didn't find myself feeling it in my esophagus or burning down. It was drinking like
Like I could drink this
like a
neat easy.
cocktail.
Yeah,
Right?
easy.
Like a cocktail. The drinkability is phenomenal on this bottle. The flavor is there, but it's not like, hey, I'm a bourbon, wince, right? It's I'm a bourbon, keep going.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of a it's and the proofing is insane. I would have said
And
this
that's
was
what I was gonna say.
I would have if you wouldn't have said anything about the proofing without
40%.
I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
I would have said
80
this
proof.
was an 80 to 92 proof.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like a Basil Hayden.
Absolutely, and I think this is for anybody who, like, if you're showing up to a friend's house and you want to be like, you want to flex a bourbon and you want to be like, oh guys, let's drink this bourbon. The bottle looks amazing. The idea behind putting the bottle together, phenomenal customization, and then walking in with 110 proof that I would say an entire table could drink and not wince at, even if they're not, I'm not gonna say not a regular bourbon drinker because again, it is 110 proof. Most of the people we bring on,
It's definitely not a novice, but it's a beginner bourbon.
Exactly. It's a beginner bourbon that's a higher proof, and you could have a good time and a great conversation like we did today with a group of friends. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the rock rating, just overall. And you guys know that I'm a sweet guy. This one leans a little too sweet for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
As a bourbon and as it sits, I love the flavor sitting on my tongue and don't get me wrong. I think this would make a phenomenal cocktail. This would lend itself to a great old fashioned or Manhattan, especially with like the dry vermouth. But as far as the other barrel picks that we've had from the Rouge, the Whistle Pig and the Old Forester, I would put this on the introductory level between the three, and I think I'm gonna sit at around a 3.8 or a 4 for this one.
I think I wouldn't put it in an old fashioned just because I like a little bit more out of my bourbon for an old fashioned. A Manhattan, I still think the street vermouth would go over. I think if you're gonna lose it that way, I'd probably put it in a mint julep. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's just like maybe soda water. Just I don't know.
Sour.
Yeah, a sour.
Yeah.
You know, it'll play more with the flavor profile. It's not flavor wise, it's not strong enough to hold itself up to maybe an old fashioned, but drinkability. I'm with Jameson. You pop this baby open, we're probably gonna kill the bottle over a game or a conversation or something like that. It's the drinkability is phenomenal, but the flavor and everything else holds its own. I do agree. It's a little on the sweeter note side of things. It doesn't have that traditional bourbon chew the fat kind of thing that I really like. But I'm still I'm perplexed by the fact that it's 100 proof. It's just doesn't go that route for me. So that's awesome. And I don't know if it's all the bottles of the 46 single barrel the select or it's just the one that he picked. I still don't.
What do you think?
I'm kind of complex on what to rate it still.
You want to come back to it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm dwindling like I feel bad for giving it like a 3.5 because it drinks so well. But flavor wise, it's like, it's not my wheelhouse, but then it's 100 proof. So
110 proof.
110 proof, even more so,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I want to give it a solid 3.5 just because it's kind of I'm staring at it like if it's a mutant.
Okay.
It's a weird it's a definitely a different bourbon.
It's hard to rate. It is.
It is.
And the rate. The
not in
reason-
a good or a bad way. It's
No,
just
it's
weird.
hard. I stick with that 3.8 only because of the past bourbons that we've had, and I feel like I have to stay true to the other 110 proofs that we had. Even the Heaven Hill that we've had here at the Rouge. That's where I get my 3.8 rating from.
But it's if you had to compare it to the category it's in there with the normal commercialized bourbons like a Jack Daniel's, Jim Beam, all that stuff. But it's elevated so much more than those.
Yeah.
But it's not a Heaven Hill.
Yeah. All right, JMO, what you've been
Or even a
literally
smoke wagon.
Literally been swirling and staring this whole time. Give it to me. What are you thinking?
4.5.
Damn. I gave it the best rating.
So here's
3.5.
but here's why. And now after this bottle, I can definitively say I am not a fan of the whole I'm going to put staves in a barrel and let it age for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I don't think it does anything. I think it's a marketing gimmick because to me, if you were to blind taste test this, right, the only reason I would rate it higher is because it's 110 proof. Mm-hmm. But if you were to put this up against a Basil Hayden's toasted barrel, I think they taste almost the exact same.
I agree.
And if I'm going to have a 110 proof bourbon, one, I want to feel like it's 110 proof, right? It is, the drinkability is great. So for beginner bourbon drinkers, awesome. But if you're going to go through this whole deal of picking out specific staves and 1,000 different combinations of these different oak barrels and blah, 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 I would want two things to happen. One, I would want it to be more complex. And I just don't think there was enough complexity. Like, we all did the nose. We came up with the same three things: floral, caramel, pepper. That's it, right? There was really nothing. There was no real underlying fruit notes. There wasn't any kind of cinnamon.
And I didn't really feel like it evolved throughout the episode.
And the second thing I would want is I would want it to evolve. And I'm drinking JC's glass right now. Tastes the exact same.
The thing is that you know me, my some of the flavor profile is the burn. I've said that time
Agreed.
after time.
Oh, yeah,
I like the
knowing
burn
that I'm drinking
at
bourbon.
110. Where the hell's my burn?
Yeah.
It's dangerous because I'm gonna drink this like crazy. But the burn is kind of probably my.
But like the
one of
Heaven
my,
Hill grain of glass that we had was 115.
Yeah.
Right? Phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it aged and it changed. It went through a couple different flavor profiles. It opened up this.
If I
as
could,
easy as it is, it's the same.
All right, now
if I could like put it in kind of a live action, this 110 proof kind of like snuck in line and went through, where the Heaven Hill hugged your tongue.
yes, yeah,
The burn just
absolutely.
kind of hugged your tongue.
Also, I'm going to tell you right now, if you tell me what the pour is and it's north of
Well, that's what I was going to say.
$20, I'm changing this to a 5.5.
Hold on, and
tell you
that's
that right
that's
now.
that's going to play
I'm gonna tell you
part
that
for
right
me. I
now.
forgot about the price, because if I have to throw out a price on this, and I kind of know that it's obviously Maker's Mark, the original, is staple. They have it some top shelf, whatever. This is higher than that. If it's
15 is my bottom line.
$15,
For a pour.
so for pour.
No, not for bottle.
For bottle, if the I don't know if do you know the bottle price?
Bottle price ranges between.
Nope, don't tell me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if
But you do know it.
Yeah.
all
And
right,
you know the pour price.
without putting the price into the element of this, if I'm just judging the juice and no price point, I'm still staying around at 3.5 because it's a decent bottle. There's missing notes for me, maybe closer to 4. I don't know. It's I can't beat it up too much because it was good.
I'm
Now if you
not saying it wasn't good. It was
right,
great.
and that's why I kind of can't beat it up.
I just can't at this point. We're at 77 or 70.
right.
se-
It
yeah,
doesn't
78
differ.
bourbons.
It hasn't differentiated itself.
It
Yeah.
hasn't gone. Hello,
Right.
like I'm here.
Now, if you tell me this bottle is over $65, I give that bitch a 7.
So so here when you come to the Rouge, the pour on this guy is going to be anywhere between 20 and 24
Okay,
for this. And
I'm gonna give it a 5 then.
okay. And
What'd I say?
but to my point on that, that's exactly why Chris does what he does here, where you can come in and you can learn the differences.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, guys, 100%, if you're bringing a date here and you're coming in and you want to be like Mr. Bourbon, I'm drinking a high proof.
What was the Heaven Hill pour?
The Heaven Hill pour was like 30.
Okay.
All day,
Yeah, 32.
I go for the Heaven Hill all day.
Yeah, all day, 100%, absolutely. And so, I think that for the Rouge, this is a wonderful bottle to have in its rotation, going from Old Forester to then the Whistle Pig with and then the Maker's Mark. This bottle is here specifically for somebody who comes in, knows the name of Maker's Mark,
That's what I was just
and
about to say,
wants
yes.
and
If you-
wants to
if
have
you're
a higher
Maker's
level
Mark
bourbon.
fan, and you want that, like, okay, I'm a Buffalo Trace guy, but I want Eagle Rare, I want E.H. Taylor, I want, something elevated. But you're a Maker's Mark person. To me, it's the same as like not the same level, but like a Jack Daniel's Eric Church version.
Yeah, or like a single barrel. Yeah.
Right.
Your
Yeah,
gentleman's
exactly.
Jack.
Like if that's what you drink, and you go, you know what, I want to try something a little bit, because this differentiates itself from Maker's Mark in
100%.
general.
Oh yeah,
100%.
I mean, again, 110 proof. It
I
does
just-
not drink like 110 proof.
Yeah, I would personally have a hard time at $20 to $25 a pour for this versus an extra $5-6 for a Heaven Hill grain of glass or the Whistle Pig that you guys had last week.
You
And
gotta come in and have that Whistle
And
Pig, 'cause
I'm
it
not.
was-
I'm kind of with you. I
Like it almost throws me off
The flavor-
that
the-
it's too easy to drink at 110 proof.
110
I think
proof,
that's what's throwing me off.
right, and the whole stave thing.
yeah.
But
I
it is,
kinda-
I think if you're
cool.
if you're a beginner as far as a bourbon drinker goes, and you want to try 110 proof,
Yeah,
and you want
this
to
one,
guarantee
all
that
day
you're
long.
not going to get
This
turned
one.
off by that higher proof.
Absolutely.
This one 100%.
What's the price per
Absolutely.
bottle?
So price per bottle, you're looking anywhere between 40 and 60.
Okay.
Depends.
All right. So yeah, I'm still.
And on that note, guys,
I'm good.
One important thing: not only can you come here to the Rouge and buy a pour, you can come into the Rouge and buy a bottle from there. So if you come in, you talk with Chris, any of their bartenders, and you taste something that you like, ask them, because you can walk out of here with a bottle.
Now I would buy this for.
Oh yeah,
$55.
I would buy this for 45, 50 bucks.
Oh, and if you want to
Absolutely.
just get a really good buzz and not like wince at 110 proof, this is your bottle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I did
Absolutely.
not. The nose, the taste, it was smooth. Not 110 proof. I would have compared it, like you said, to a Basil Hayden, 80 to 92 proof at
I just
tops.
wanted it to evolve.
I wanted
That's
it
what
to
I
do a
was
little
hoping
more.
for.
Yeah.
I wanted the burn.
Yeah.
I wanted
But it
to
never
evolve.
Well,
came.
guys, phenomenal episode, and to all viewers and listeners, I apologize. I tried to keep it timely, but
Yeah, we don't
great,
do that.
great. It was a
We
great
don't do that.
topic. We had to give you the info.
It's an erection year.
It's
So-
an erection. So on that note, guys, remember you can always find us and reach out to us at resotr@themilehighperspective.com or give us a phone call.
720-584-3361.
And you can find all of us on our own individual socials. Oscar.
Oscar the Realtor. Oscar the Realtor. CO or
That
just
was-
Oscar the Realtor.
That was the Maker's
That was the
Mark.
110 proof that just came in and liver
Jabbed a
punched
little
me.
bit. You can find me at That Lifting Agent or The Lifting Agent. If you have any questions about video production, you want to do a podcast yourself, BTG Productions or BeatTheJeansProductions.com. Jameson?
I was just going to say the 110 proof turned you dyslexic.
Yeah, it did.
The Colorado real estate guy on every platform. And you'll find me hibernating until summer because this weather
Jesus,
sucks.
I love this weather.
And,
I mean,
uh,
you get to get warm and comfy and cozy.
Get
Get
out,
some
go.
As
chili,
always,
some
guys,
hot
check
chocolate.
check out the Rouge
Hashtag I love fall.
.com for all of their events coming up. They do their drag brunch every month on Saturday. Check that out.
Twice a month.
Twice a month on Saturday. Check that out. They always have events coming in. Again, come in, learn about bourbon, learn about wine. They're extremely knowledgeable here, and they're more than happy to have you, just like they're happy to have us. But on that note, guys, good luck with your election choices.
Please
Everybody, go vote. Hug each other. Hug your neighbor. Talk to your neighbor. We'll catch you later.
Over a nice glass of bourbon.
Yes.
Deuces.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Vote and subscribe.